We have breaking news right now. Donald Trump is now saying everyone should immediately evacuate Tehran, the capital of Iran. We don't know what's coming next. Could the United States be entering this conflict? Maybe. In a new Truth Social post published minutes ago, Trump writes, Iran should have signed a deal I told them to sign. What a shame and waste of human life. Simply stated, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. I said it over and over again. Everyone should immediately evacuate Tehran. That's all he posted. Now, there are rumors going around that the United States may be preparing to possibly join Israel in bombing Iran. There's obviously no confirmation there. Reports earlier suggested that Trump would not get involved unless Iran injures or kills an American citizen. That has not happened yet. But we also don't know what's happening behind the scenes in this conflict. And Donald Trump could very well be preparing to possibly bring in American troops into Iran. I mean, not on the ground, but in the air. We'll see what happens.
The U.S. now looks poised to enter into war with Iran pretty soon. Where Trump has told Tehran to evacuate, the Joint Chiefs of Staff are at the White House. The president's ordered the NSC to gather in the Situation Room, and he left the G7 early. Now, with that, you have the Pentagon denying that the U.S. is going to enter the war and says that it's all defensive posturing. But you had Trump saying that he needed to leave early from the G7 for obvious reasons because he has big stuff going on. Right? And Trump, it appears he spent the past 2 hours kind of telling the whole world that we're going to be striking Iran, with the media taking a swing at allies like Tucker Carlson who aren't on board with an American strike in Iran, or with Trump calling him kooky and then Marjorie Taylor Greene defending Tucker Carlson over Trump. And all of that is earlier today we reported that another carrier has been to the region and over 32 tankers were sent to southern Europe last night. Additionally, we're seeing other countries moving their military assets out of the U.S. base in Qatar, including Qatar, who have moved some of its own assets to Turkey. And over the U.S. right now, there are at least 7 tankers working together with 5 more tankers taking off and heading east. Something that could possibly indicate that B-1 bombers are already in the air. And that is a U-28 Special Operations Command jet landed in St. John's in preparation to cross the Atlantic tonight. And so for now, are you team nothing ever happens, or do you believe the U.S. is going to be bombing Iran soon? Well, I guess we'll all find out if you're right soon, so follow to stay in the loop.
We have some serious breaking news right now. Donald Trump is leaving the G7 early right now following dinner with the heads of state, according to Caroline Leavitt, because of what's happening in the Middle East. Folks, it is looking increasingly likely, although unconfirmed, that the United States may get involved with this war in Iran tonight. Donald Trump previously told residents of Tehran to evacuate immediately. Now we have confirmation from the White House press secretary that Trump will be leaving the G7 gathering of world leaders early. This could mean a whole host of things. Either Israel is going to launch a major attack on Tehran tonight, or the United States will get involved. There are reports online that Israeli media is suggesting that the United States is getting involved tonight. This could be a very long night. A very long night, and bear with me, I will be providing you coverage every step of the way as we get information. This could be a very defining night as well for the future of American-Israeli relations, the future of America's stance on the world stage. We could potentially be going to war with Iran soon. I'll provide you updates every step of the way, though, so follow along for more.
Well, we'll come down so hard if they do anything to our people. We'll come down so hard, then the gloves are off so beautifully. Now, I think they know not to touch our troops.
What have you heard? What have you heard from the Iranians?
They'd like to talk, but they should have done that before. I had 60 days, and they had 60 days, and on the 61st day, I said, we don't have a deal. They have to make a deal, and it's painful for both parties, but I'd say Iran is not winning this war. And they should talk, and they should talk immediately before it's too late.
It now looks increasingly likely that the U.S. is going to join Israel's war on Iran. Right, and that is that Nimitz aircraft carrier is traveling to the Middle East, where it will meet another carrier. Also, the U.S. sent 32 tankers across the Atlantic last night, with most of them amassing in Spain. Israel also reportedly formally asked the U.S. to join the war. You know, if the U.S. is entering into the war, this is what it would look like. The U.S. would likely be dropping bunker busters on Iran's underground nuclear facility because Israel lacks the capability. Right, in the past, we've seen the B-1 and B-2 travel continuously from Texas and Missouri and then enter the Mediterranean via the Strait of Gibraltar. The B-2 bombers will likely be carrying the massive ordnance penetrator, and that's 20 feet long and 30,000 pounds. At max, they can carry 2 each. In the B-1, it's not officially able to carry them. However, it would carry smaller bunker busters if they're used. And all of this is Israel's already established air superiority over Iran, so if the U.S. acts, it'll likely face little resistance. And as of right now, you have U.S. officials saying the movement of these tankers and the aircraft carrier, they're to give the U.S. more options in the Middle East. You also have the G7 releasing a joint statement saying that Iran must never have a nuclear weapon. However, Trump refused to sign it and called for Iran to re-enter nuclear talks. Though that is, Netanyahu has said that he won't entertain any nuclear talks with Iran and said he will kill Iran's supreme leader if he needs to. Though Iran has reportedly sent private messages to the US and US allies expressing a willingness to talk and a request for a ceasefire. And that is, the Iranian foreign minister called Netanyahu a war criminal and said that he has deceived previous American presidents into fighting his wars for him. But for now, followed a statement. It now looks increasingly likely that the US is going to join Israel's war on Iran. Right, and that is that Nimitz aircraft carrier is traveling to the Middle East where it will meet another carrier. Also, the US sent 32 tankers across the Atlantic last night, with most of them amassing in Spain. Israel also reportedly formally asked the US to join the war. You know, if the US is entering into the war, this is what it would look like. The US would likely be dropping bunker busters on Iran's underground nuclear facility because Israel lacks the capability. Right, in the past, we've seen the B-1 and B-2 travel continuously from Texas and Missouri and then enter the Mediterranean via the Strait of Gibraltar. The B-2 bombers will likely be carrying the massive ordnance penetrator, and that's 20 feet long and 30,000 pounds. At max, they can carry 2 each. In the B-1, it's not officially able to carry them. However, it would carry smaller bunker busters if they're used. And all of this is Israel's already established air superiority over Iran, so if the US acts, it'll likely face little resistance. And as of right now, you have US officials saying the movement of these tankers and the aircraft carrier, they're to give the US more options in the Middle East. You also have the G7 releasing a joint statement saying that Iran must never have a nuclear weapon. However, Trump refused to sign it and called for Iran to re-enter nuclear talks. Though that is, Netanyahu has said that he won't entertain any nuclear talks with Iran and said he will kill Iran's supreme leader if he needs to. Though Iran has reportedly sent private messages to the US and US allies expressing a willingness to talk and a request for a ceasefire.
We have serious breaking news right now. Donald Trump has requested that the National Security Council be meeting with him in the Situation Room upon his return to Washington, D.C. this evening. Donald Trump is leaving the G7 early right now as we speak after dinner with the heads of state. He'll be returning to Washington, D.C., where he will be meeting with his National Security Council in the Situation Room amid rumors that the United States may get involved in Iran tonight. China, meanwhile, is telling its citizens to immediately leave Israel as the situation has become increasingly severe. They have told all citizens living in Israel to immediately leave the country. This is a very significant development, folks. We are going to have a very long night tonight. Something big is happening, whether Israel increasing attacks on Iran or the United States going to war with Iran alongside Israel. Get ready. I'll have updates. I'm not sleeping at all tonight, so I'm going to have updates all night for you. Spread the word. Follow along for minute by minute, hour by hour updates all night.
President Trump just arrived here in Canada less than 24 hours ago, but he's already cutting his trip short at the G7 summit, with the White House citing the situation that is unfolding in the Middle East as the reason why President Trump is leaving the G7 summit early and returning to Washington tonight. I'm told by a White House official that the president has directed his national security team that remains in Washington to convene inside the Situation Room. And of course, this comes after the president posted earlier on Truth Social that the millions of people who live in Tehran should evacuate immediately. It's not clear exactly what prompted the president's warning to people who live there. It comes after he said he did believe that Iran was effectively at the negotiating table when it comes to making a nuclear deal, as we've continued to see Israel hit Iran and Iran hit Israel. It still remains to be seen how much more the U.S. could get involved, if at all more involved, but it's certainly something that President Trump has not ruled out.
Donald Trump left the G7 in Canada early to come back to the U.S. on what we were told was urgent business.
I wish I could stay for tomorrow, but they understand this
is there a reason,
big,
Mr. President, that you can't do your...
The big question is, what is he going to announce when he gets here? Now, initially, the feeling was that he might be about to announce some kind of ceasefire. In fact, it was more than a feeling, because the French President, Emmanuel Macron, alluded to such. But Donald Trump has since posted whilst in the air on Truth Social and said that Emmanuel Macron was mistaken to say this was going to happen. And the reason he's coming back is something much bigger. Now, there are reports in the US and in Israel that the US is preparing to get involved in some other way in Iran. The big question is, how much is it going to get involved? Donald Trump, you'll remember, posted online in which he said on Truth Social that everybody in Tehran must evacuate immediately. We know that when he does arrive to the White House, he's going to convene with his national security team, not just in the Oval Office, but in the Situation Room, which is where you tend to see these teams, which will include the Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth. It's when you tend to see these teams during some kind of big, active military engagement. So we'll wait to see what happens with that. Of course, with this administration, until Donald Trump makes that announcement, it's anybody's guess. But we will keep watching that over the coming hours.
Have you heard any signals or seen any messages from intermediaries that Iran wishes to de-escalate the conflict?
Yeah,
What have you heard? What have you heard from the Iranians?
they'd like to talk, but they should have done that before. I had 60 days, and they had 60 days, and on the 61st day, I said, we don't have a deal. They have to make a deal, and it's painful for both parties, but I'd say Iran is not winning this war, and they should talk, and they should talk immediately before it's too late.
And what would you say, in your opinion, what would it take for the U.S. to get involved in this conflict militarily?
I don't want to talk.
Reports are coming out that the U.S. is going to be getting involved in the war tonight. So I just want to remind everybody, you're not alone.
They'd like to talk, but they should have done that before. I had 60 days, and they had 60 days, and on the 61st day, I said, we don't have a deal. They have to make a deal, and it's painful for both parties, but I'd say Iran is not winning this war, and they should talk, and they should talk immediately before it's too late.
The worst possible outcome for the world is for the Iranian nuclear program to survive after all this. How do you destroy their program? Through diplomacy? I prefer that, or through military action. If diplomacy is not successful and we left with the option of force, I would urge President Trump to go all in to make sure that when this operation is over, there's nothing left standing in Iran regarding their nuclear program. If that means providing bombs, provide bombs. If that means flying,
busting bombs,
whatever bombs. If it means flying with Israel, fly with Israel. The worst possible outcome for the world is to take the Iranian nuclear program on and leave it standing. That will be a disaster.
Senator Blumenthal, what's your view? How involved should the U.S. get?
Let's begin with the basic proposition that ought to motivate American policy as well as the world's. A nuclear-armed Iran is an unacceptable threat to the world, not just to Israel, but to the United States as well. And I support Israel's right to defend itself against this existential menace. I'm very concerned right now about United States personnel in the region, our servicemen and women, but also the civilians that are there. I'm getting phone calls from families in Connecticut who are deeply worried about their children who were there, about the hostage families. I support the president's effort to prioritize diplomacy.
Iran confirms U.S. military bases will be targeted in the coming days. During Iran's attack on Israel last night, President Trump gave the order to the U.S. military to assist Israel in shooting down these missiles. And Iran is claiming that this is a direct intervention by the United States and that they are now a part of the conflict. It is worth noting that the type of missiles that Iran fires is unable to be intercepted. As we watched last night, the David sling over Israel fell. The most likely bases to be struck are the Air Force bases in Iraq, which were being used to shoot down some Iranian drones. Days ago, President Trump did give the order for air bases like this in Iraq to evacuate all non-essential personnel. Remember, the U.S. had no involvement in this. We didn't have to do anything. Both powers could have fought each other, settled it out themselves, but no, America, thousands of miles away, we just had to get involved, put our troops in danger, put American lives on the line. And even though Israel attacked Iran first, we are going to pay the price for Israeli action. Make sure to follow me here for the update.
The Trump administration initially emphasizing overnight that it was not involved in these attacks, saying Israel had taken unilateral action here. But then President Trump this morning standing strongly by Israel in a few posts, saying in the last few hours that he gave Iran chance after chance to make a deal, but no matter how hard they tried, no matter how close they got, they just couldn't get it done. He went on to say that there is still time to make this slaughter, with the next already planned attacks being more brutal, come to an end. Iran must make a deal before there is nothing left and save what was once known as the Iranian Empire. And then in a second post about an hour later, the president said he had given Iran a 60-day ultimatum to make a deal, and that today is day 61. He said, I told them what to do, but they just couldn't get there. Now they have perhaps a second chance. So a couple of things, guys, to highlight from these posts. The first is the president appearing here to show more explicit support for the attacks than his Secretary of State did. Rubio emphasizing Israel acting alone, and the president highlighting how this came only after the U.S.'s preferred options hadn't worked. And then secondly, he talks about this idea of a second chance. The president is continuing to shepherd Iran toward a negotiated nuclear deal, even after these attacks now. As you mentioned a few minutes ago, the next round of those talks had been set for Sunday. So I've asked about those, the status of them. We will have to see if they still take place, and of course, what they look like. And then finally, just in the meantime, both Israel and the U.S. today bracing for retaliation. As soon as today, I should say, Israel has declared a state of emergency, and we know the U.S. State Department has established a Middle East task force, according to an agency spokesperson who says the U.S. is continuously planning for a wide range of situations for regions with heightened tension.
You just said Iran tried to assassinate President Trump twice. Do you have intel that the assassination attempts on President Trump were directly from Iran?
Through proxies, yes. Through their intel, yes. They want to kill him. Look, he's enemy number one. He's a decisive leader. He never took the path that others took to try to bargain with him in a way that is weak, giving them basically a pathway to enrich uranium, which means a pathway to the bomb. So for them, he's enemy number one.
Yeah.
Look, they also tried to kill me, but I'm his junior partner.
What you're watching in real time is peace through strength and America first. Our job is to be strong. We are postured defensively in the region to be strong in pursuit of a peace deal. And we certainly hope that's what happens here. And America first means we're going to defend American personnel and American interests. So when you see jets and you see air defense assets and counter UAS assets, that's because my job as the Secretary of Defense is to ensure that our people are safe and that we're strong so that we can set the conditions for a deal. And President Trump's made it clear it's on the table. The question is whether Iran will take it.
All right. So the deal is still on the table, but all options are on the table from what it sounds like. What does that look like?
What it looks like right now is we're vigilant. We're prepared. And we've messaged consistently from the beginning that we're in the region to defend our people and our assets. And Israel took an action out of self-defense. We believe that Iran, as President has said from the beginning, should not have a nuclear weapon. That position hasn't changed. They can give it up peacefully. That position hasn't changed. And as a result, right now, we've got assets in the region and we're going to defend them. And we're going to be strong in the process. So people are reading into a lot of aspects right now. We're strong. We're prepared. We're defensive, and President Trump hopes there can be peace.
We have breaking news right now. Donald Trump is weighing the possibility of striking a nuclear facility in Iran, according to the New York Times. This is one of the most consequential decisions of his young second term. Here's the latest according to the New York Times. Trump is weighing the decision of whether or not to enter the fray by helping Israel destroy a nuclear enrichment facility at Fordo, which is the only American the only facility that can be reached by American bunker busters, which are dropped by American B-2 bombers. Here's the thing. If he does this, the United States will be at war with Iran. Donald Trump is saying that he has to get back to the White House tonight urgently. He's leaving the G7 earlier to do so. The National Security Council is likely already waiting for him in the Situation Room with plans on what to do next. There is a likelihood that tonight the United States will bomb this facility in Iran, which will drag the United States into an all-out war with Iran. We'll see what he decides, spread the word, and follow along for all the...
I'm looking for the hoes.